What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Three Wide Podcast. As you can see, I'm all alone today. Unfortunately, the other two, Bryan and Bryan, can't join us today. But they picked a kind of good day to inadvertently miss out because not too much going on in Formula One this week. But there's one bit of pretty astonishing news that's growing and growing as the weeks and days progress, and that's the potential salary cap breach that two teams in Formula One have potentially, and according to reports, have gone over. These two teams have been deemed as Aston Martin and Red Bull Racing, although there are reports that from Fox Sports that Red Bull have not gone over the cap by a lot, and even if they did, they wouldn't receive the most major penalty. A penalty for exceeding salary cap can range from a minor fine to an exclusion of a championship. So basically, if, let's say, I don't think it's going to happen, but say if if Red Bull it's found out that Red Bull have exceeded the salary cap, I don't know, 15 million, Max's title could be excluded. Even if that was the case, I don't think they'd exclude the title just because of how far it's gone. Like, I'm talking about the title he won already, or maybe this one as well. I'm not too sure on that, but my only thing is maybe he'll have like minus points with Perez for next year. But I've been hearing in the range of it could be at lowest 50,000 pounds or dollars, upwards of 15 million for Red Bull. So who knows how much they exceeded by. But like I said, even if they did exceed by a whole lot, I really don't see the FIA giving out a major penalty. I know there are probably some fans that think they should give a major penalty because, if it's like $10 million, it's a lot of money that maybe could have been spent by Mercedes and other teams, and it would have made it more competitive. But I don't think they're going to take away Max's championship if they're talking about last one, and they wouldn't take it away if they're talking about this one. There's just no way. What I see possible is if they even think about giving a big penalty, maybe next year him and Perez will start on like negative points or something like that. But I think they're just going to give Red Bull a fine if they do exceed by a certain amount. Same with Aston Martin. But yeah, it was disclosed today, or not disclosed, it was announced today that we would hear back by Monday, I believe October the 10th, about how much both teams exceeded by and their punishments. So we'll be on the lookout for that, and we'll notify you on our social medias when that does happen. Also, we have Lewis Hamilton talking earlier this week saying he could race for another 5 years. Probably very exciting news for the Mercedes team. He's a 7-time world champion. In 5 years' time, he could be a 9-time world champion. Who knows? Fernando Alonso's, I think, 40, if not around 40 years old, performing at really, really high levels that maybe some of us didn't expect. But, Lewis Hamilton, probably is thinking if Fernando Alonso could do it, I could do it even better. You know what I mean? So that's probably really comforting to Mercedes because, they still also want to develop George, and maybe once the decline from Hamilton starts to show, he could be used as a very, very good second driver to George, who will probably take a big leap in a couple of years, if not very, very soon. I'm sure once Hamilton breaks the world title record, he'll become more of a supportive role to the development of Russell than the main primary focus driver at Mercedes. But I'm sure it was very, very nice to see and hear from Toto Wolff that their main driver could last for another. He's keen to last for another at least 5 years, which is really, really nice to see because I love Lewis Hamilton. Although I'm a Norris fan, I love to see Lewis Hamilton happy and winning, obviously. And we have the Japanese Grand Prix coming up as well. Some predictions for that. I think I've seen Leclerc a couple times perform really, really well there. I think he's going to get his win there after a pretty good drive in Singapore. But I'm going to talk about race predictions in a minute because I want to touch up briefly on. I was watching the WTF1 podcast earlier, and they brought up a good point saying, wet weather racing back in the early 2010s was really, really fun to watch because F1 cars, it was so hard to overtake in the dry. So the rain really equalized the race, and you saw a lot of big overtakes. But now they said that F1's a little bit easier to overtake in the dry. Like DRS and energy, more like control driver user energy deployment. A lot of those new technological features in F1 cars. It could be seen easier to overtake in F1. And they said if Singapore was dry, it'd be a much, much better race to watch because a lot of drivers didn't really look to pass anybody in the wet because they didn't really want to go offline. And I could kind of see their point, to be honest. They have a couple anomalies to their point, like Verstappen, obviously super aggressive no matter what conditions there are. He always wants to make the most out of the situation. So Hamilton later on in the wet be tempted to go on a move on Vettel, which cost him the place to Vettel and Verstappen. But yeah, I think if the race was in the dry, we might have seen Charles Leclerc push Perez more. We might have saw Sainz push a little bit more. I think the rain kind of allowed a more neutral race and a more neutral pace for these drivers. They were kind of keen on where they were. They didn't really want to go offline and, potentially spin out and crash on such a tight street-like circuit that Singapore is. I'm sure the rain really dampened the mood of the drivers in terms of their ambition and aggression levels. So I kind of get their point if Singapore was a dry, but we did see a couple years ago how good of a wet Singapore, I think it was 2018, when Max got sandwiched by the Ferraris at the start. Maybe the drivers had that in mind, wanted a more clean race, even though we did see some spin outs and some crashes, but it was more driver error. And I think that was more what the main big drivers like Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell were wary of. They didn't want to go offline and bend it into the wall. Hamilton ended up doing that later on anyway, and Verstappen as well. So, yeah, maybe the rain dampened the mood of what the race should have been in terms of aggression and energy and the fireworks we're used to seeing at like a circuit like Singapore. But it is fun to see a wet weather race as well, like sometimes. But yeah, the drivers should be more up for it in the wet. It makes the track a lot more equal. It makes the opportunity to finish higher for a car that shouldn't be finishing higher more likely as well, like a McLaren, like a Williams, things like that. So I got the point of WTF1 that they make that maybe wet weather racing in tight street circuits isn't the best thing for the viewer anymore as it was back then, because F1 cars are they love to it's a lot easier to overtake in the dry now than it was back then. So wet weather racing isn't as big as it was, and I could see their point. I thought that would strike your guys' thoughts. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What do you think about their view and my view on wet weather racing in current F1? Do you think it's like an overrated thing where you think drivers are more, or most drivers, there's a couple that are still up for it, but you think wet weather racing these days in Formula One make the drivers more wary and more and less ambitious and less energetic while racing, or do you think it still offers those fireworks and the high ambition levels that these drivers have? Let me know your thoughts on that. And yeah, so Japan coming up. Couple predictions for you. I believe Leclerc is going to win this one. He's been pretty solid at Japan over the last couple of years. I remember one year, the year that it got postponed for, I think because of a storm or something. I believe he won that race, and he's always looked pretty good at Japan. So I'm going to give Leclerc the win on this one, and then I'm going to go Hamilton P2. I'm going to go Sainz in P3 with Perez 4th, and I'm assuming a Max 5th place. I wouldn't be surprised seeing Max win, because he does only need a win in the fastest lap to win the whole thing. But I want to back someone else than Max this race, and I'm going to keep Max outside the top 4. So, yeah, hopefully I'm right. Hopefully Japan's a good race. Singapore was a really, really good race. After the first half of it, it went a little bit slow, but Japan usually is a very tight race, pretty hard to overtake at some places, but when overtakes do happen, you're quite astonished as to how that happened, and we're left thinking, what driving skills are these? Like, they're amazing. So I'm excited for the Japanese Grand Prix. I'm also excited because it's at a rather early time for me, as I'm from New York, so it'll be like 1 p.m. for me, which is really nice, as opposed to like an 8 a.m. Singapore race or 9 a.m. European race. So yeah, I'm excited to see what goes on Japanese Grand Prix. Hope you guys are as well. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with your friends. And I'll see you guys for the next episode. Take care and peace.